Well, today we're joined by Mr. Thomas Hammarberg, European Commissioner for Human Rights, talking to us from Strasbourg. Thanks very much, Mr. Hammarberg, for joining us. Now, let's get right to it. Well, we know that there were CIA prisons in Europe and people were tortured, and now you're pushing for the truth. What more should we know?
There's a lot more to know, in fact, because we haven't had a full account for what really happened and who took the decisions and on what grounds when these black sites were established on European soil.
Of the things that we still have to know, what do you think is most important?
I think we have to learn from history, and unfortunately during this period of 10 years, very serious human rights violations were committed, and we have an atmosphere of impunity when it comes to these violations of human rights. I think the truth has to come out on what really happened, who took the decisions, who allowed the establishment of these secret places of detention, and thereby allowing torture to take place.
Now, and since this story came to light, I mean, there have been some governments ordering investigations. Well, they found very little so far. Do you think it's possible that they're deliberately trying to play it down? And if so, is there any proof of them doing so?
Well, there is an enormous pressure from Washington to keep all this secret. In fact, instructions from CIA with the support of the White House not to give any facts on this. So therefore, it's not easy to investigate. But I think that some of the European governments who have been involved, they have to decide whether they think that the cooperation between the security agencies are more important than to look into human rights violations and break the atmosphere of impunity.
Okay, well, we're talking here about European officials authorizing these rendition sites, but what about those who actually masterminded them, those who were directly involved? Do you think CIA officials will ever be held accountable for their actions?
Unfortunately, it's not likely. But if the European governments involved could take the step to really put out everything they know and publish that, it may start a process in the United States where the accountability also there is established.
But why is it not likely? You say that CIA officials...
It's not likely because there is an atmosphere of security, confidentiality around this. It's a notion that when it comes to the activities of a security agency, the truth shall not be told to the public. And I think that is a real problem, because here we have had cooperation between the United States Security Agency and European agencies, under which human rights violations were seriously violated. And it is very important that we now, when we know that violations were made, that we establish that there should be democratic control of the security agencies' activities.
Well, there are claims that the US and the UK sent prisoners to be tortured in Libya to the Gaddafi regime. Does that seem likely to you?
Yes, it's very likely, and it fits the pattern. And also there are now documents being discovered in Tripoli which show that this actually did happen.
Okay, and you've seen proof of such things happening yourself?
No, not myself, but there have been reports, lastly from Human Rights Watch, showing that there was such activities. And typically this is not made a subject for comment from the CIA in Washington, because they have the policy of never making any public comments on such revelations.
Now, the commander of the rebel forces, that's Abdel Hakim Belhaj in Tripoli, he demanded an apology from Western powers over his alleged rendition in 2004. Now, allegedly, he was arrested in Bangkok and handed to Gaddafi forces for torture. Now, how do you think they're going to explain their alleged murky deals with Gaddafi to the rebels, because now they're essentially on the same side?
Yeah, I think that question has to be given to Washington. There is an explanation to be given there, but he was obviously one of those who were picked up during this so-called war on terror. He was in Guantanamo, that's shown, and he was obviously one of those who were badly treated. And I think he and others deserve an apology. Some of them who were brought there to Guantanamo or to the secret places of detention or to partner countries of the United States in this, where they were tortured, they were probably not innocent, but still, even people who are on good ground suspected, they have the right to certain protection when it comes to human rights, including not to be tortured.
Now, the rebels are now in control, and foreigners are reportedly in danger, especially black Africans, because, well, there have been accusations of them being Gaddafi's mercenaries. How do you think this will affect the building of a democratic society in Libya?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on Libya. My focus is on Europe, but obviously there is a problem there, and human rights organizations have already reported about problems when it comes to how rebels have dealt with Africans who have been accused of being mercenaries for Gaddafi. We could just do our best in order to ensure that those people are well treated. Some of them, of course, may well be genuine refugees from other parts of Africa who were trying to reach Europe and passed via Libya and got stuck there. And I think it's very important that also European governments deal with refugees from Libya coming from other parts of Africa in line with international standards when it comes to asylum and refugee policies.
Well, looking at the humanitarian crisis now in Libya that has been reported, what do you think is the area that needs the most attention at the moment, and how are they going to go about solving these humanitarian problems? I mean, this is very general. Can we break them down?
Yeah, first of all, it is important to establish security in the country so that the normal life could start again. Secondly, to build democracy, because there was no democracy there, which is a very difficult challenge. And I hope that there could be a generous approach from Europe to share the experiences we have when it comes to the steps to be taken in order to build institutions, democratic ones, and to allow for the genuine will of people to be channeled into political decision-making.
Okay, well, going back to what you're an expert on, those black sites, what do you think is the next step now that the story has come out into the public?
In Poland, they have already started through the prosecutor an investigation, and I think it's very important that his work is protected and that there is no attempt to slow down his work because it's sensitive in the relationship with the United States. In Romania, the work hasn't really started. There was one investigation by a political group from the Senate, but the prosecutor has not started an investigation. And I really hope that that office will now take the initiative and start analyzing the situation and come up with the report.
Yeah, you were saying it's important that the investigation is not blocked. Earlier, you were expressing your concerns that there could be directives from higher up to not give enough information. How do you go about going about that hurdle, knowing you're dealing with governments here?
Is very difficult because of this notion that activities by the security agencies and their cooperation between themselves should be kept secret at all costs. I think that is really the notion that we have now to start discussing, because so many human rights violations have been committed under that notion, and the time has come to establish a democratic control of the security agencies. They should not be allowed to take action which violate basic human rights.
Yeah, should not be. But do you think that, let's just look at concrete actions. We're talking about what is right, what is wrong from your point of view, but concrete actions. I'm just wondering, really, legally speaking, will it be possible to get all of the truth out?
I think it will be very difficult, unfortunately, but I hope that the discussion that may come now will encourage some of the politicians to take braver steps and a better position when it comes to this, because it's not acceptable that we have states within the states who are run on an undemocratic basis and violating human rights. The security agencies must be put under democratic control, and they are not for the moment, in my opinion.
Well, you said you're using the 10th anniversary of 9/11 to raise the issue of CIA black sites. Why is that? Because,
you know, I think the first priority, of course, is to pay respect to the victims of the attack on the United States 10 years ago. But then we also have at the same time to look at how did the US government and European governments respond to this attack. And unfortunately, I think there is a lot of lessons to be learned from how this war on terror, so-called war on terror, was conducted, which allowed for very serious human rights violations, which unfortunately also had the effect that terrorism has spread. The militant groups have increased. And the number of people killed, and many of them innocent during those 10 years, they also deserve some respect in this situation. And therefore I think it's absolutely important that the way we handled this gruesome attack will be under an honest discussion so that we don't repeat this in the future.
And speaking of militant groups, you just released a report based on your visit to Russia's North Caucasus, which is, of course, a region marked by sporadic violence by terrorists. How do you assess the struggle against the terrorists over there?
The struggle is still going on. There have been some positive initiatives taken. A lot of money has been put on budgets in order to improve the standard of living in the area. There is a focus more on the social dimension of this, the roots for terrorism, which I think is very positive. But unfortunately, there is still also a problem of impunity, that crimes which have been committed, including by law enforcement forces, have not been satisfactorily addressed, and people guilty, responsible, have not been brought to justice. So there is still a need to do more when it comes to that aspect.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Thomas Hammarberg, Human Rights Commissioner of the Council of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you.